And so your view and the view kind of people to be loved. The thing that's so interesting is so if people are coming into the LGBTQ conversation, I recommend Matthew Vines as kind of the best popular level, you know what I mean by that, sort of entrance into the affirming position.
Yeah.
And then I recommend your book as a very kind entrance into the non-affirming position.
Right. Yeah.
And so part of why you're getting crap, right, is because you're not totally affirming, but you're not non-affirming in the way that you should be. Right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That I would passionately articulate and maintain, and if I need to, defend a traditional view of marriage. I do. I'm not allowed to say this, but I think it's among the clearer teachings in Scripture. But I would turn around.
Hold on a second. Wow. No, I mean, that's a huge statement these days, right?
Yeah. And even, in a world where everything is just your interpretation, people don't like to say it's clear because it is a subjective statement. Sometimes I say it's clear to kind of provoke people to react,
That'll work.
But I would turn right around in the very next breath and challenge the conservative church to not just try to love LGBT people, but delight in and laugh with and dine with and have them over to watch your kids and to, share bread over the table and to learn from. Like you can actually get in a conversation with a married gay couple and actually learn relational wisdom from that couple. I mean, maybe I'm not saying just because you're gay means you've nailed it relationally, but just to extend that grace leash much farther than the church has ever thought they could extend it. Yeah. And so people see me as schizophrenic sometimes. I don't know what to do with it, but I truly, and I know I'm not throwing, the J card down as a Trump. I mean, when you look at the life of Jesus, I just see that. I mean, he upholds a very high standard of obedience, like the Sermon on the Mount. Try reading the Sermon on the Mount and then going outside and doing that. It's like, oh my gosh, like he cared deeply about obedience, but then he radically loved those who fell short of that standard of obedience. And so I do think that Jesus, I think he nailed it. Yeah. Imagine that.
Shocking.
But I think his approach to what I call let's just say, those who have been seen as socially unacceptable sinners by the religious elite of his day, that almost perfectly maps upon how the church has gone about the LGBT conversation. So I just look at the life of Jesus and say, how did he treat those who, are similar to how we have historically treated LGBT people? So for traditional churches, the traditional view of marriage has been so stigmatized as being anti-gay. You think all gay people are going to hell, or if they get saved, they have to become straight. So if I have a statement that's, for lack of better terms, is a non-affirming statement, people are going to say, oh, okay, so that church is anti-gay. They hate gay people and think they're creepy and all this kind of, stuff that we created for ourselves from the moral majority in the 1980s and 90s. Like we provided people with that kind of impression of the traditional view. And even like, I think people have blurred they have blurred sexual ethics with loving people so that,
dude, that's the big one. That's the big one.
So here, I mean, I'm constantly trying to push people to in a sense, separate those two.
How could you love somebody, Preston, if you disagree with who they are?
See, that's the
right. That's how it comes across, right?
And so here's what I try to say, and I'm not saying this irons it out, but my view is that it's as succinctly as I can say it. As a Christian, I believe in the historically Christian view that sex difference is part of what marriage is, and that all sexual relationships are intended to be expressed within that covenant bond, period, the end. We include everybody. What is inclusion? Inclusion is including people by the grace and forgiveness and love of Jesus into a community seeking sanctification, holiness, and repentance. And its sexual ethic is one aspect of what we're including people into. So all people are welcome, and all does mean all. But to my radically affirming friends, all means all. We include everybody. We don't point the finger at anybody. I'm like, okay, great. That's awesome. So I got my buddies, and he's in the KKK. He wants to come to church with his white hood on. Is that cool? Well, yeah, but he's got to take that hat off. And I'm like, I agree, man. But don't don't make it about including versus including. The only disagreement is sexual ethics. And any genuine Christian is going to draw the line somewhere on sexual ethics, you know? And so I may draw it differently than you, but don't make it about you're inclusive and I'm not. We just have a different sexual ethic that we are including all people into. Now, I'm speaking for myself, and I would definitely say many evangelical churches are excluding gay people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's part of the problem. But, you know, people talk about, man, why don't you want to include LGBTQ people in your church? I said, I would be so honored to submit to a gay pastor. Transgender identified pastor, a queer it's not even about those identities for me. And this gets me in trouble with those on the right. For me, it's about, is the person living faithfully to Jesus according to the sexual ethic that I do believe is the biblical, historical ethic that we are living by.
But if you use that test, Preston, then almost all of our straight pastors would disappear, right? Because
you're not allowed to be tempted by sexual temptations. Then
totally,
and really.
Right. I mean, I have a friend who has struggled with pornography his whole life and has been seeing huge victory in that. And these are, I mean, here Christian, this is so Christianese, right? Struggle with and victory. But he's seen a great degree of progress. He works for a pretty well-known Christian institution, and he stumbled. Again, Christian word. He looked at porn for maybe 15 minutes. And it had been the first time in like 6 months. I mean, he was just doing great. But he went and he confessed, hey, you know, I had this 15-minute episode where I looked at porn. It was the first time in, you know, a very, very long time. And 2 hours later, they fired him. No explanation.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. I mean, just boom. And so
60% of its leaders are looking at porn for more than
exactly. That's it. So my question is, so whenever I say, hey, I think the creational ideals in Genesis 1 and 2, technically I don't even live up to that. If you take the words of the Sermon on the Mount seriously about lust,
right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so again, I probably push it. I'm with you in pushing it because I'm sitting here thinking, if that's the test, if how well I hold to my sexual ethic is the test, well, I don't even consistently hold to my sexual ethic.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's good. I mean, it's this kind of posture that is going to reopen up many conversations and avenues for the LGBT community to sort of reconsider the church, because one of the biggest complaints is the hypocrisy.
Oh my goodness!
There's so much stuff that we turn a blind eye to, or are allowed to struggle with, and they're just like, why can't I struggle out loud? You know, the biggest difference for me is there's a difference between struggling with sin versus calling sin righteousness. So to me, and I'm a huge grace guy. I mean, I probably to a fault. You know, I'm like,
that was a good book.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I tried to push it as far as I could, and so for me, it's not the struggle. I just want to create large open spaces for people to struggle out loud with anything. And because of the nature I'm in ministry, I might get all kinds of stuff with people with unwanted desires for really, I mean, all kinds of sexual fetishes I mean, I can go on and on and on. This isn't just an LGBTQ versus straight. I mean, this is like, there's so many things that people are struggling with, desires that they don't want, that they didn't choose. The biggest difference for me, though, is, are we kind of pursuing the Genesis 1 and 2 ideal imperfectly with space for failure and forgiveness versus celebrating, you know, and pursuing not that, you know? Yeah.
And that's where the pastoral issue gets so tricky.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if you're conservative on this, wouldn't you want people to be brought in, even if they're loud and proud? Yeah. Wouldn't you want people to be brought into the orbit of word and spirit and community?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. And so I mean, that was our thing at the church, and we did it imperfectly, and we hurt some people for sure. We would allow people to share their stories, and we didn't know how to handle stories where the you know, one of the punchlines was, why I just embraced being gay, and I got married to, you know, my dream, and this person rescued me, and we were super. I was still working it out, but to create space, you had to. I mean, there are people who are loud and proud about their lust issue or their greed issue or their pride issue. Right? I mean, so where do you even draw that line between, yeah, we don't want to baptize unrighteousness,
right,
but I also don't want to order someone's discipleship either.
Yeah.
Like if somebody comes in and they just have a huge ego and everyone is like, dude, this dude is a jerk.
Yeah.
I don't lead with that, right? I sit and I go, well, bringing into the orbit of Word, Spirit, Eucharist, and community, maybe God opens that up.
And there are, with somebody like that, huge egos, or people that are kind of type A++ personalities where they're just steamrolling over people without realizing it and are insensitive and whatever. Like, we would give them a generous leash or a generous time frame for what it's going to take to work this out. I mean, some people go to the grave, which just stanky stubbornness, and just bullheadedness and all these things that are violating all kinds of. So I think giving people space, that discipleship is a really sometimes torturous, long, messy process. And we allow it for some people, but not for others. Or as one of my friends said, we're most likely to vilify the sins that we're least likely to commit.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.